Guys, this is something I spoke about, I think 6 or 7 months ago, but didn't plan on speaking it this morning. Had something else, but felt the Lord saying revisit it. So we're going to revisit this topic of rest. Rest, R-E-S-T. Because usually when we talk about rest, the only time we see it is after we are dead, they put it on our gravestone saying R.I.P., rest in peace. No, that's sleep in peace. Rest is for the living. Rest is for the living. So from now on your gravestone insists that they put S.I.P. And then they'll wonder, they'll think you were drunk most of your life, but that's a different thing. But rest is for the living. When we die, we sleep for a while. God took 6 days to create everything. And when he created man, he concluded creation. So God created everything for man, guys. If you look at the things that God created over the first 6 days, everything was created for man. God only created one thing for himself. Imagine that, eh? The Creator could have, when you and I create things, we create it for our advantage. But when God created things, he created everything for man. That's part of the reasons you can come against allergies in your life. Every seed-bearing plant, everything that was created was made for our benefit. When things that are made for our benefit turns against us, it's not in the original plan of God. And remember one thing, we are constantly heading back to the original plan. God has only one plan, plan A. There is no plan B. What started in Eden, God is restoring. The evidence of the kingdom, as in God's rule and reign present here amongst us, is signs, wonders, healings, provision, miracles, peace, rest, joy. These things were present in the garden, and God's constantly taking us back. When Chad mentions prototype, one of the prototypes we need to become as a church is a people who are different from the rest of the world because God lives in them, and the presence of God is evidenced by others. Amen. Not through prayer, but through our lives. And so the only thing God created for himself was the seventh day. God created the seventh day, and he hallowed it, and he rested. It's the only thing he created for himself. And since then, one of the things God has been asking is that, hey guys, I've entered into rest. Why don't you come and join me? And he doesn't mean come die. And rest is not something that's waiting for us in heaven. These things are meant to happen on earth. God created one thing for himself. It's called rest. And he said, come join me. Come into rest. If you go to Hebrews chapter 4, it actually says that. God says, Hebrews chapter 4, I think 8 to 12 or something talks about it. I have entered into rest, and I am inviting you, Jacob, to step into the one thing I created for myself, which is rest. God created one thing for himself, the Sabbath rest, and God entered that rest. And he's been resting ever since, eh? And he's now asking us to come into it. So how did he go about it? First, he went to Israel, and he said to Israel, listen, I'll teach you how to rest. So here's what I want you to do. Every week, give me 1 day of your life where you don't work, where you don't do anything, where you just lean back on me. Now remember, Israel used to work every day, and their livelihood came by the wages they got every day. And so what is God telling Israel? Listen, 1 day a week, don't work. Trust me, I'll provide for you. I'll get you food. I'll make sure everything is taken care of. Give me 1 day. He wasn't trying to give them a holy day. He was trying to give them a dependent day. We've made Sabbath into a holy day when God's intent with Sabbath was, I want to give you a dependent day where you do nothing on your own and you depend only on me. And Israel struggled with this. Struggled with it. Because they would go and work on Saturday. Why? Because I got to feed my family, no? Can't take a break. I got to cultivate my crops, no? The birds will come and eat it. So they kept working. So God decided, okay, let me try something else with them. He said, once every 50 years, give me 1 year. It would freak you out, man, if God turned up in your bedroom tomorrow and said, starting tomorrow for 1 year, don't go to work. Just give me the year and I'll take care of you. We wouldn't know what to do. We'd think it was the devil. But this is what God was asking Israel. Once in 50 years, give me an entire year where you don't sow, where you don't reap, where you don't work, and I will make sure that there is so much in the 49th year that it will be enough to last you for the 50th year. What is he trying to teach them? Dependence. Sabbath is not a holy day. When God hallows something, it means he sets it apart. And what he's saying is, come, I've got something set apart for you that you can enter into and live like I do. I live in rest. I want you to imitate me and live in rest. So how does it work for New Testament believers? It gets harder. At least with Israel, it was 1 day a week or 1 year in 50 years. With us, here's what God is saying. Give me your entire life where you depend only on me to sustain you, and you will only do what I ask you to and nothing else. That's what it's being asked of us. Jesus lived like this. Huh? Jesus lived like this. Guys, this is absolutely possible. As you're looking at me, the faces say, okay, preach on. Maybe some of you can do it, not us. No, it's possible for all of us to enter into this life of rest. It's possible for every one of us. And that's what I'll hope to convey today. The primary meaning of Sabbath is to be still. You know, when we sing be still and know that he is God, what happens is the song gets very soft and worshipy, and everyone kind of becomes still. No, that was the last thing God wanted. Sabbath is not the absence of work ethics. It's not God saying be lazy. No, he said be still. As in, guys, lean back on me. I am the one who does everything anyways. Now do you see why Jesus said, I can do nothing on my own accord, but I only make judgments as I hear them, for I seek not my will, but the will of my Father. And therefore my judgments are right. I shall do nothing till I see my Father doing it. This is the way you enter into rest. And it's absolutely possible for us to live this life. So Sabbath means to be still or to desist from exertion. Just imagine, the actual meaning of Sabbath is desist from exertion. Desist from exertion. To step back from exertion. That's what it means. To be someone who ends contention. No more are you striving for stuff. You step back from contention. Guys, look at how serious God is about the Sabbath. Huh? Just look at this. Thank God you and I are not in the Old Testament, because this church would be much smaller. See, if you violated the Sabbath, God said you needed to be stoned to death. If you violated the Sabbath, you were to be killed. That's how serious God is about the Sabbath. Thank God that doesn't happen nowadays, eh? Now do you see why God spoke Deuteronomy 8 verse 3? Look at what he says there. Man shall not live by bread alone. What did he mean by that? See that in those days, the one thing that you sustained yourself by was the baking of bread. It was a means of self-sustenance where you baked bread to feed yourself. And God is saying, listen, I don't want you to live by bread alone. Meaning, I don't want you to continue to live by means of self-sustenance. Okay, Father, so how do you want us to live? I want you to live by every word that proceeds out of my mouth. And what is God saying? God is saying, hey, Jacob, abandon your self-sustained methods, your formulas, your striving, your exertions. Suspend them and live by what I tell you every day. This is why he sent them manna, because every morning they had to go seek manna. What do you think you and I are supposed to do every morning here? Why do you think I've changed the teaching that I've prepared over the last 3 days this morning? Because I can't live by self-formulated methods of teaching. Got to find out, Father, this morning at the 8 o'clock service, what do you want done? And then go with it. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. Guys, if we don't work this way, God uses a method called humbling. And what happens in humbling is you become dependent on him. I would rather just be dependent without going through the wilderness process. It's not very pleasant. It's pretty hot out there. So try to begin to walk into this thing called rest. As we talk about it, perhaps it'll get clearer. Guys, rest is a way of life. It is the way of life for a Christian. It is the way of life for a Christian. God is at rest, but his covenants are active. God is at rest, and I'll explain that. God is at rest, but his covenants are active. Hey, do you realize what Jesus did for us on the cross? I know there are many different sermons that can be preached on Jesus' last 3 words, it is finished. But one of the things he meant when he said, it is finished, is, Jacob, I've done everything. Now you can step into rest and let me go to work for you. I've done everything. It is finished. Everything that you need for life and godliness, I have accomplished. I mean, here's a chicken egg question. When a farmer plants a seed, is God at work or is God not at work? When a farmer plants a seed, is God actually working or is he not working? Half the church will say he's working, half the church will say he's not working, and the third half will keep quiet. This is why I never got through math. So here's the thing there. In a way, God is working, and yet he is not. Because in Genesis 8, he established a principle. And the principle was, as long as the earth remains, there will be seed time and there will be harvest. God established a principle. Here's another question. When Shalom was leading worship and he started jumping up and down on that Yes, Lord song, when the girls were doing the same thing, was God working to make them come down to the earth every time they jumped up? Every time you jump up, is God saying, oh shucks, Jacob jumped up. Better bring him back to the earth. Better bring him back to the earth. No doubt. The reason every time I jump up, I come back to the earth is because God established a principle. And that principle is called gravity. God has established thousands of principles like this down. We got to know them. We got to know them. When is the last time you threw your baby up and you started praying, Abba, please send the baby back down, Abba, please, please. No, every time you throw your child up, you know the child is coming down. Why? You are confident of this covenant that God has established in the universe called gravity. So guys, God has established covenants and principles. They can go to work for you. A farmer doesn't go after sowing a seed and says, in the name of Jesus Christ, I command the seed to come up now, come up now. He doesn't do that every morning. He goes, pours water, he digs around the seed, he works. But his work does not mean that he goes and tries to get that seed out. That is God's job. Because every time there is seed time, there is harvest, a principle is established. Guys, this is how we can live, where God's covenant goes to work for you and you go into rest. Jesus lived like this. Jesus lived like this. He knew what his father was capable of. His father would say, son, go do it. He would do it and he would rest. This is why in the boat, the father said, son, go across the Sea of Galilee with your disciples. I got work for you there. So Jesus says, let's go across. A carpenter with 10 other sailors, 11 other sailors, because one was a tax collector. And so they go across. Nice. Can you imagine the conversation in that boat? 10 fishermen, one tax collector, and one carpenter. Sounds like a joke. But so they start going, and what does Jesus do immediately? He takes a pillow and goes to sleep. Jesus is at rest. Why? Because he knows that his Father has told him to go. He knows the covenants of the Father will now take care of everything else. And so he goes to rest. This is the way we can live. Guys, in Ezekiel 44:17, there's this marvelous verse. It always grips me when I hear it. And here's what it says in Ezekiel 44:17. God says to the priests who come to minister before him, hey, when you come to minister before me, make sure you're wearing linen turbans and linen loincloths. Linen turbans and linen loincloths. Why? So that when you minister before me, you should not perspire or sweat. First time I read it, I thought to myself, why would the God of the universe be concerned about sweating. Priests sweating. Shalom was sweating here. Why should he be concerned about priests perspiring? The point was not that priests should not perspire. God was saying, listen, when you come and minister before me, I do not want you to perspire, as in, I do not want you to indulge in self-exertion. The turban always meant your thinking. The loins were always a symbol of your strength. I do not want human wisdom or human strength to be the source or the means that you use to minister to me. Everything has to come from your spirit and your relationship with me. No self-exertion. The more we become like this, the more people will eat the grace of God from you. When there is no self-exertion and when the Spirit of God begins to work through you, there is no mixture done. I think I said this before. I was in a samosa shop in Canada, and on the wall there was a sign. It said mixed sweet, $3.99, $3.99. Only problem was, sweet was spelled S-W-E-A-T. So it was actually mixed sweat for $3.99. So I laughed and walked out of the shop. 2 days later, I came back, and there's a big X on that sign. And then I realized the X was not on the mixed sweat. It was on the cost. It had gone down to $2.99 because stale sweat is a little cheaper. The point being that sometimes when we don't work out of rest, people eat mixed sweat. The sweat of our human wisdom and human strength mixed with the grace of God. When you begin to lean back on God and do only what He says, you don't have to worry about the outcome now, because it's the Spirit of God and people eat of the grace of God, man. And they go home alive. This is why Paul said in 1 Corinthians 2 or 2 Corinthians 2, I didn't come to you with any demonstration of power or great wisdom. I came to you in trembling, so that the Spirit of God may be displayed amongst you, that His power be made evident. We struggle with this, because right from when we are children, what are we told? You do your best, God will do the rest. That scripture doesn't exist in the Bible. You do your best, God will do the rest. No, God says, I'll do my best, you just enter into rest. That's what He's saying continuously. I'll do my best, you enter into rest. Because He's done everything there. All you have to do then is hear and obey. Well, that's one of the things. The seed for rest is obedience, where you hear God. A hearing people. Jesus would hear and do. Hear and do. So, what does Joshua do? He hears that he's supposed to walk around the city for 7 days, so he keeps walking. Nothing else he does. 7th day, what happens? One of the strongest cities in that area falls down. That's what happens. Amazing how this happens, da. Enter into rest. I remember once God telling me to go all the way to Sydney, Australia. Never been there. So, as most wise pastors do, I started getting contacts from Sydney so I can meet with them and do whatever is necessary. And while I'm doing that, the Lord's saying, I want you to go to Sydney, Australia. I don't want you to make any preparations. I want you to check into a hotel and wait till I do tell you what to do next. And that's a long wait, 16 hours. And an expensive flight. Took a flight to Sydney, checked into a hotel. First day goes by, nothing happens. Second day goes by, now I'm thinking I heard God wrong. And all I can sense God saying is, enter into rest. And so I'd go for walks, just saying, okay, Father, 2 days gone. Third day, someone gives me the name of a pastor that I'm supposed to call. So I call him, and he says he doesn't have any time to spend that day. Third day done now. And I'm walking down the harbor, and I'm saying, Father, are you sure this is you, or have I just come on my own? 3 days have gone by and nothing happened. And the Lord reminded me of Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 11, where He asks Jeremiah, Jeremiah, what do you see? And Jeremiah said, I see an almond tree. And God says, you have seen well. And as I was thinking of the scripture, the Lord says, Lord, show me, in just a flash, He shows me a lighthouse. And He asks me, what do you see, Jacob? I say, I see a lighthouse. And then I walk around the corner, and right in the middle of the street is the replica of a lighthouse. And God said, suddenly, you have seen well. Stick with it. 3 days go by. Fourth day, the pastor says he wants to meet me for coffee. And so we sit there for coffee, and God had given me a word for him the previous night. And as we were sitting for coffee, I began to read the word and tell him what God is going to do with his life, what God is going to do with his church. And he just starts weeping. Because that Sunday, they were going to go to their church and announce the shutting down of their church. They were going to close the church that Sunday. He said, could you come to church and talk to my people? Went there. His wife was like Job's wife, very bitter. Hopefully she's gotten over it. Went there that Sunday. God did a transformational work in the church, and the church is still alive. It was the only thing accomplished there, da? Yeah, he is worthy of our applause, eh? This is how rest works, da. It is a scary proposition because we like formulas, we like exertion, we like planning. Nothing wrong with any of it. But that should not be our fundamental means of operation. Our means of operation is to lean back on God because God has planned everything. You think he hasn't gone ahead to Coimbatore and is already working there? There is no place that you are going to that God is already not working in. He's already there. He's already there. I was talking about this in the morning there. 5 simple things to help you enter into rest. One of the reasons we find it so hard to enter into rest is because we want to control and manage everything. So badly want to control and manage everything. If I don't do this, no one will do this. If I don't take care of this, this will fall apart. If I don't do this and pray this way, something will happen. We are so constantly caught up, even in Christian activity, we lose rest because we got to control and manage and pray and rebuke and do this and do that and everything. The time we spend rebuking things, Christians have something called spiritual ulcers. When we don't have a job, we are at peace. But if we get 2 job opportunities, I've got to choose right. I don't know what the will of the Lord is. Ulcers begin to form, man. Got to learn to enter into this place called rest. Because people will see you. What did Noah do for the world? He entered into rest and he took 8 people with him. When you become a person of rest, you create a habitation of rest for others. That's one of the things a prototype should do. Create a habitation of rest. You think Eden, you know what the word Eden meant? Delight. Delight cannot happen unless there is peace and rest. That's what Eden means. We got to release control. Release wanting to manage things. This month, take 2 areas in your life where you're super controlling. And see if the world stops if you release control. You release control and God begins to step in because he knows how to take care of it better. He knows how to take care of it better. Rest is the clearest and strongest life illustration that what God did is working perfectly. Rest is the clearest indication in my life that what God is doing is working, and Jacob doesn't need to tinker with it. Jacob just needs to hear and do whatever God tells him to, and God will take care of it because God is doing his best because he doesn't know how to do anything less, and Jacob is at rest. All he has to do is obey and do. And obey how much? Only what God has told him to. Only what God has told him to. Go to Sydney, go to Sydney. Check into a hotel, check into a hotel. And then do nothing, Jacob. It goes against the grain of your thinking, da. This is why the disciples were frustrated with Jesus. They are sinking. They're bailing out water from their boats. They're experienced sailors. And what is their great leader doing? Sleeping. So they word it very nicely. Jesus, carest thou not that we are drowning? As in, what they really meant to say, Jesus, use your head. Please get up and do something. Either bail out some water or do something. Get us out of this mess. Carest thou not? You know, Christians live in a place called careful unbelief. Christians live in a place called careful unbelief. We are called to live in a place of careless, reckless belief. So how do we enter into this rest? How do we enter into this rest? Guys, first thing, if you want to enter into the rest, you have to be a person who does not operate primarily by your 5 senses. You have to be a person who does not operate by the soul. You have to become more and more of a spirit man. Because our 5 senses, touch, taste, and those other 3, will always give us info that will frighten us, man. You cannot live out of the soul. Deep calls to deep. Spirit calls to spirit. Begin to learn how to live as a spirit man. This won't happen overnight, but if you start today, first of all, Hebrews chapter 4 says, today if you hear the voice of the Lord. And guess what? Even though it's Jacob speaking, this is the voice of the Lord. Today if you hear the voice of the Lord, start today with this idea that I'm going to abandon management and control. I'm going to abandon careful unbelief. And I'm going to step into this thing that God is inviting me to. God said, Jacob, I have entered into rest and I'm waiting for you. Will you enter into rest with me? How do we know Jesus has entered into rest? He's seated at the right hand of the Father. It is finished. And where are we seated? With him. So the first thing you do is, today if you hear his voice, you're hearing his voice. You're hearing his voice. Second, try not to live by experience, formula, human wisdom, self-effort, rationalization. Try not to live by experience, formula, self-effort, human wisdom, and rationalization. Try to live by, Abba, what are you saying, Father? Try to live by that. Next thing, the more you get to know the workings of God, the more you will cease from your own works. Beautiful line there. Write it down inside your head. The more you get to know the workings of God, the more you will cease from your own works. The more you get to know the workings of God, the more you will cease, C-E-A-S-E, from your own works. In the earlier service, I was telling them that these are 5 Sunday school truths that can really bring peace and rest into your life. 1, know without a shadow of a doubt that this morning when you woke up, your God is Alpha and Omega, the first and the last and everything in between. Absolutely, eh? He is everything. The first and the last, the beginning and the end. Everything he is. Second, know that he owns everything. He owns everything. He owns everything. Third, he controls everything with regard to my life and what's happening around my life. Even in the valley, we sang, he is faithful. He controls everything on every valley, in every mountain. Everything. 4, he is very kind. He is very kind. He's really kind. Everything he does flows through the channel of kindness. He is very kind. Hey, when I come to Chennai, I stay with Christy and Kirba. If you don't know them, they're really nice people to know. So here's the thing, if I come to Chennai, look at how restful life is. I don't have to worry about who's going to pick me up from the airport. I don't have to worry about whether I'll be fed or not. I don't have to worry about laundry. I don't have to worry about whether I'll get to the church in time. I don't even have to worry sometimes about getting my shirt ironed. I don't have to worry about being provided toothpaste, shaving cream, and everything. I don't have to worry about going and exchanging Canadian dollars for Indian dollars. I don't have to worry about any of this. You know why? Because I know that they are so kind that they will take care of it and will always look out for my good. And because of that, coming to Chennai is always like a holiday for me because I have to do all these things by myself at home. Here, everything is done for me. They actually carry my bag, but once I come near the church, I say, hey, give me my bag back. People will think that you're carrying it for me, which they are, but I don't want to give that impression, so I then take my bag from them. I've got to do nothing when I come to Chennai because they are so kind. Same principle, God is 1,000,000 times kinder than them. If they being evil, it's just a scripture, if they being evil know how to be so kind to me, imagine what God is like. God is super kind. This morning when you woke up, kindness is the only way he knows. He does not know how to be unkind. And then the fifth thing, he's always looking for ways to do you good. He is always looking for ways to do good for you. Hey, every morning, get up and think on these thoughts. Because otherwise, circumstances in your life will begin to frustrate your relationship with him. Circumstances in our lives begin to frustrate our relationship with him. Sometimes I tell him, Father, you are God and you don't owe me an explanation. But as my father, could you just kind of tell me what's happening? Because he looks for ways to do you good. Don't let circumstances frustrate your relationship with him. So, get to know the life and the workings of God, and the more you will rest from your own work. Operate from this position, guys. I'm unable to do anything for you, but I trust you to do everything in me. I'm unable to do anything for you, but I trust you to do everything through me. Father, I'm unable to do anything for you. Can't teach, can't preach, can't worship, can't do nothing. But I trust that you can do everything you want through me. This is the position Jesus took. I am nothing. The Father is everything. I can do nothing by myself. I mean, Jesus saying that, and he actually meant it because he doesn't lie. This is how we begin to live, This is how we begin to live. Trust the work of the Spirit of God. Trust the work of the Spirit of God. And as you do, guys, you will see that you can do in one day what it takes 35 years for someone else to do. One of the things I love about Chad is his discovery of ancient doors and keys that he keeps finding God showing him or giving him. And you know what will happen when you get a key or see a door that gives you a shortcut into a place? You will do in 2 days what someone else has been trying to do for 35 years. This is the thing with rest. They tried bringing down Jericho. You think enemy armies didn't come against Jericho? Jericho was an impregnable city, which is why they knew that if they shut their doors, even the God of Israel would not be able to do anything. And what did the God of Israel do? He did one thing. He said, you enter into rest and let me be the best that I always am. Amen. And so they enter into rest. And they rest 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. Hey, God worked 6 days. And then the 7th day, he tells us, enter into rest. What do? We work 6 days. And then we say, okay, Father, 1 day we'll rest for you. No, the other way around. He worked 6 days and then entered into rest. We are supposed to enter into rest and work from a place of rest. Guys, every time you speak, know this, that light and darkness collide when you speak the words of God. Every time you speak, every time you speak God words, light and darkness collides. And when light and darkness collides, there is only one thing that happens. Darkness cannot overcome light. Darkness cannot absorb light. Darkness has never put light out. Light prevails. So even these words that are being spoken are words of life, for the Spirit of God is a spirit of life. And any void, any place of darkness that is willing to receive the word of God will have things created. It happened in Genesis and it is still happening today. Enter into this place of rest, Enter into this place of rest. Guys, rest won't eliminate challenges. It won't eliminate challenges. It won't eliminate tests, but you can walk through life in rest. You can walk through life in rest. Here's what I suggest as I end. Find out covenants and principles God has established. Be it healing, be it provision, be it grace, be it faith, be it your marriage. Find out what God has already established. Let it go to work for you. It's going to be hard because your mind will say, Illa, I've got to do something. I've got to do something. People who are at rest are very irritating to people who are not at rest. They'll wonder why you're not panicking, why you're not bailing out some water. It's okay, da. God knows how to do this. I enjoy finding out, Father, what's the principle that should go to work for me so that I can go into rest and only do what you tell me. I was in Mongolia recently. I'll end with this story. I was in Mongolia recently, and the pastor said, can you begin to pray for people who have sicknesses? And I've never seen so many people getting healed. And then I suddenly realized that God was really into healing that day. And then I realized, oh shucks, I don't need to pray for people. God is into healing today. So anybody can pray and people will get healed. So the translator is standing next to me. And after some time I said, hey, you can also start praying and people will get healed. Anyone who was praying for people were getting healed instantly. All the healing prayers were super short. Father, thank you for healing this person. Kata, the person would get healed. Backs would get repaired. Hands would get repaired. And I'm standing thinking, wow, Father, this is so much fun. No prayer, no fasting, nothing. People are getting healed. Half the time we fast because we want to come up with a formula that will make things work for us. Enter into rest. Hear, do. Let God begin to work for you. Let God begin to work for you. Watch gravity at work.